The alien girl's arrival, the sun shone brightly over the spaceport, casting long shadows across the concrete ground as various ships from all corners of the galaxy landed, carrying travelers, traders, and tourists. The bustling area was alive, with the chatter of different languages, the hum of engines, and the clatter of cargo being unloaded. Among the crowd of humans and aliens, one ship in particular stood out. It was smaller than most, and as it touched down on the landing pad, its hull seemed to shimmer in the light. It had the strange, worn look of an old transport vessel, the kind that had seen many years of travel. As the hatch opened, a strange, unfamiliar scent swept through the air, making several people nearby wrinkle their noses. Some backed away quickly, whispering to each other about this strange smell. Others looked on curiously, unsure of what to make of it. The first to step out of the ship was an alien girl, her features almost human, but unmistakably different. Her skin was translucent, glowing faintly under the sunlight. Her silver eyes scanned the crowd as she stepped down from the ship, and though she tried to appear confident, there was an obvious discomfort in her movements. The alien girl was not used to being in such a large crowd, and the scent that surrounded her, the one that caused most people to shy away, only made her feel more isolated. She wore a simple flowing robe that barely touched the ground as she walked. Her pale hair, long and straight, cascaded down her back like silver threads in the sunlight. Her name was Lyra, and she had come to Earth as part of a diplomatic mission. Though the mission was less about forging relations and more about proving that her species, the Zendari, could be trusted among the other intergalactic communities. She was a representative of her people, sent to show that despite their strange appearance and even stranger habits, they could integrate with other species. But as Lyra looked around, she realized that integration was not going to be as easy. As she had hoped, the crowd parted in front of her, avoiding her path. Some of the aliens who passed her looked at her curiously, but quickly turned their gaze away. Humans did the same, their eyes briefly landing on her before hastily moving to go something else. Lyra was used to this reaction, though it still stung every time. Her species' scent was unlike anything the humans had encountered before. It was a natural defense mechanism, a way for her people to ward off potential threats. To a Zendari, the scent was comforting, familiar. But to others, it was overwhelming, sharp, and unpleasant. Lyra walked slowly toward the station's main building, her footsteps echoing in the quiet that had settled around her. She tried not to feel the sting of rejection, but it was hard. She had been trained to understand that not everyone would accept her, that not everyone would be willing to see past her differences. But the loneliness was always difficult to bear. At the entrance to the building, a young human man, his name was Alex, was standing with a group of fellow workers. They were talking, laughing, and catching up with each other after a long shift. Alex was the kind of person who didn't usually pay attention to much. He was focused on his work, the mechanics of ships, and fixing things. But when he looked up and saw the alien girl standing at the entrance, something about her made him pause. His friends continued their conversation, but Alex couldn't take his eyes off her. He noticed the way everyone avoided her, their faces contorting in disgust. As the air around her shifted with the strange scent, it wasn't something Alex was used to either, but unlike his friends, he didn't feel the urge to step away. Instead, he found himself intrigued. The alien girl's eyes were large and silver, almost mesmerizing in their depth, and her movements were fluid, graceful in a way that humans couldn't quite replicate. She was different, but there was something captivating about her. "Who's that?" One of his friends whispered, nudging Alex in the ribs. Alex shrugged, still watching her from a distance. No idea, he replied, his voice a little too loud in his own ears. But he didn't really care. Something about her made him want to know more. The group continued walking toward the building, but Alex lingered, watching as Lyra stepped into the main hall. She stood alone, her silver eyes scanning the crowd nervously. Alex noticed the way people tried not to look at her, the way they stepped aside when she passed. She wasn't just another alien visiting Earth. She was someone who didn't belong. At least not in their eyes. He took a deep breath, pushed his hands into the pockets of his jumpsuit, and started walking toward her. It wasn't as if he had any grand plan or even any idea of what he was going to say. He just knew that he couldn't stand watching her be ignored any longer. There was something about her that made him feel sorry for her, even though he couldn't explain why. When he reached her, Lyra was staring out the window at the busy spaceport outside. She didn't notice him at first, and Alex stood quietly, for a moment, unsure of how to start the conversation. But eventually, he spoke. "Hi," he said softly, his voice startling her. She turned quickly, her silver eyes locking onto his wide with surprise. "Hello," she said, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any disturbance." Alex shook his head. "You're not disturbing anyone. Just seemed like you could use some company." Lyra blinked at him, surprised by his words. The others had avoided her all day, and now here was this human who didn't seem disgusted or frightened by her. She didn't know how to respond. "You don't mind my scent?" she asked, her voice unsure. Alex shrugged again, giving her a small smile. "It's not so bad," he said. "I mean, it's different, but not bad." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, trying to read his face. She had never met a human like him before. Most humans recoiled from her scent, but Alex didn't. She wasn't sure why, but she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a small feeling of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't entirely alone in this strange new world. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible, but Alex heard it. With that, their conversation began. And though neither of them knew it at the time, it would mark the beginning of something that neither of them could have predicted. Alex's first encounter. Over the next few days, Alex found himself drawn to the spaceport central hall where Lyra usually sat. She had become a regular sight there, though she was still the object of many curious glances and whispered comments. But unlike the others, Alex didn't avoid her. He'd walk past her, nod, and sometimes exchange a few words. It was nothing significant, just small talk, but every time they spoke, it felt like a small bridge was being built between them. Lyra had always felt like an outsider. Her people, the Zendari, had long been known for their strange ways, their unsettling appearance, and their even stranger customs. And their scent, well, that was the hardest part to deal with. No matter how hard she tried to fit in, the scent would always give her away. It was the very thing that kept people at a distance, like an invisible wall no one could cross. But Alex wasn't like the others. He didn't wrinkle his nose when he passed by. He didn't turn away. He didn't seem bothered by her scent. It was strange, but in a comforting way. It reminded her of something she couldn't quite place. It was different from the scent of her own people, but it felt warm, like home. It was something that gave her a sense of peace, even in such an unfamiliar place. One day, as Lyra sat in her usual spot near the large observation window, Alex approached her. She was watching the ships land and take off, her eyes following the sleek, powerful vessels as they soared into the sky. The humans around her were busy, moving about their business, too focused on their tasks to notice her. But Alex did. He noticed everything about her, how she sat quietly, how her eyes sparkled with an unspoken longing, how her silver hair glinted in the sunlight like liquid metal. There was a sadness to her, an emptiness that he could see even from a distance. He walked over and sat down beside her without asking for permission, something that surprised both of them. She glanced up, startled at first but quickly relaxing when she saw it was him. "Mind if I sit?" Alex asked with a small grin, not waiting for her to respond before he took a seat. Lyra shook her head slowly, still not used to people sitting with her without hesitation. "No, of course not," she replied quietly, her voice soft and almost hesitant. "I didn't think anyone would want to sit near me." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" Lyra looked out the window again, her gaze distant. "Because of the scent," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's why everyone stays away. It makes people uncomfortable." Alex didn't flinch, didn't recoil. "I don't mind it," he said simply, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "It's different, but it's not bad." Lyra turned to look at him, her eyes wide with surprise. No one had ever said that before. "You don't find it repulsive?" "No," Alex said with a smile. "I think it's kind of calming in a way. I don't know why, but it reminds me of something." Lyra blinked in confusion. "Reminds you of what?" Alex shrugged, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not sure. I can't really explain it. But it's not a bad feeling." The silence between them grew comfortable. Lyra looked out the window again, her mind racing with thoughts. She had never met anyone like Alex. Most humans couldn't stand her presence for more than a few minutes, let alone sit with her for longer. The fact that Alex was willing to stay and talk without any visible discomfort or judgment was something she didn't quite know how to handle. "So," Alex said, breaking the silence, "where are you from?" Lyra hesitated before answering. "I'm from Zendara. It's a planet far from here, in a different star system." Alex's eyes widened in curiosity. "Wow, that sounds far. What's it like there?" Lyra smiled faintly, a small glimmer of warmth appearing in her eyes. "It's a beautiful planet. It's covered in forests, mountains, and oceans. The air is clean, and the sky is always bright, even at night. But it's also a lonely place. There aren't many of us. The Zendari are a small species, and we've always kept to ourselves." Alex leaned forward, intrigued. "Why did you come?" "Here then, to Earth, I mean." Lyra's smile faded, and she looked down at her hands. "My people. We're trying to prove ourselves to the other species in the galaxy. We're hoping to make alliances, to show that we're not a threat. But it's hard when you're constantly seen as different." Alex watched her, his heart heavy with understanding. He had always known that life on Earth could be difficult for those who weren't human, but hearing it from someone like Lyra made it real for him in a way that he hadn't expected. He felt a pang of sympathy for her, but also a sense of determination. He wanted to help her. He didn't know how, but he wanted to make her feel less alone. "So," Alex said after a pause, "how long are you going to be here?" Lyra shrugged, the sadness creeping back into her eyes. "I don't know. I'm supposed to stay for a while, but I don't think anyone here is interested in being friends with an alien. It's hard." Alex leaned back against the wall, staring up at the ceiling for a moment. He thought about what she had said. Humans. weren't always the most welcoming to outsiders, and the galaxy was filled with species that were constantly wary of one another. He knew that Lyra had to feel like an outsider in a way that no one should ever have to feel. "You know," Alex said thoughtfully, "you might not find many people here who understand, but there are some of us who don't care about your scent. Some of us just want to get to know you, the real you." Lyra looked at him again, surprised by his words. No one had ever said something like that to her before. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the sincerity in his voice, the kindness in his eyes. She had thought that Earth would be a place of constant rejection, but here was a human who saw past all the differences. For the first time since she had arrived, Lyra felt a small spark of hope. Maybe Earth wouldn't be so lonely after all. Maybe there was a place for her here. "Thank you," she whispered, the words escaping her lips before she even realized it. "Thank you for not running away." Alex smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Anytime, Lyra. Anytime." The conversation didn't need to go any further. Both of them understood, in that moment, that something had shifted. Something had started between them, and though neither of them knew where it would lead, they knew it was a beginning. A growing bond. Days turned into weeks, and as the days passed, Alex found himself spending more and more time with Lyra. It had started with brief conversations, just small exchanges between two people who happened to be in the same place at the same time. But now, their interactions had grown into something more. They spent hours talking, sitting by the windows of the spaceport, watching the ships take off and land, and sharing stories of their worlds. Lyra would speak of the forests of Zendara, where the trees were so tall that they seemed to touch the stars. Alex would talk about Earth, about the quiet, peaceful places he'd grown up in, and how the world had felt so small before the galaxy had opened up to him. The more they talked, the more they understood each other. Lyra shared stories of her people's past, of a time when they had lived in peace, away from the rest of the galaxy. She spoke of how her species had been misunderstood for centuries, how their scent, which was once a symbol of protection, had become something that other species saw as dangerous or repulsive. But what hurt Lyra the most was the fact that her people had never been given a chance. They had always been seen as strange, as outsiders, and Lyra feared that nothing would ever change. Alex, on the other hand, had grown up with humans who often treated differences with suspicion, but he had never let that shape how he viewed the world. He had always believed that understanding and kindness could bridge any gap, no matter how wide or how deep. He had grown used to the idea that things weren't always simple or easy, but he had always tried to make the best out of whatever situation life threw his way. The first time Alex truly saw the weight of what Lyra carried, he had been sitting next to her on the same bench near the observation window. The spaceport was bustling as usual, but today the atmosphere was different. Lyra seemed distracted, her silver eyes gazing out at the horizon, her mind far away from the spaceport. "Lyra!" "What's wrong?" Alex asked, his voice soft but concerned. He had grown used to her quiet nature, but today, something was different. Her usual calm demeanor seemed distant, almost sad. Lyra didn't answer right away. She sat there, her gaze fixed on the vastness outside, and for a moment, Alex thought she might not say anything at all. But then, slowly, she turned to him. Her eyes filled with a kind of quiet sorrow. "I've been here for weeks now, and nothing has changed," Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would see me for who I am, for what I am. But all I've seen is rejection. They still look at me like I'm something to fear. Alex felt a pang in his chest as he listened to her words. It wasn't just the sadness in her voice, it was the way she had said it. The way she had resigned herself to the idea that nothing would ever be different. It hurt him to think that anyone could feel so hopeless, especially someone like Lyra, who had so much to offer. Lyra, you can't let their views shape who you are, Alex said firmly. They don't know you. They don't understand you, but that doesn't mean they never will. It's just going to take time. But you're not alone. I see you. I hear you. Lyra looked at him for a long time, as though trying to find the truth in his words. She had heard similar things before, but from Alex, it felt different. There was no judgment in his voice, no pity, just understanding. She wasn't used to that. In the quiet of the moment, she felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. I'm glad you're here, she whispered. I didn't think anyone would care. It's just so hard to be different. Alex smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. It's not about being different, Lyra. It's about being yourself. And that's more than enough. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Lyra felt like she had found someone who truly saw her, someone who wasn't put off by the things that made her stand out. It was a small moment, but it meant more to her than she could express. And from that day on, their friendship began to grow even stronger. But the world around them wasn't always kind. Alex continued to visit Lyra every day, but not everyone at the spaceport was happy about their growing bond. Whispers followed them wherever they went. Some humans couldn't understand why Alex would waste his time with an alien, especially one who was so different. There were even rumors that Lyra might be dangerous, that her presence might bring trouble to Earth. Alex heard the murmurs, but he ignored them. He had come to care for Lyra, and no one was going to make him feel guilty about that. One day, as Alex was finishing up some work on a ship, he overheard a conversation between two of his co-workers. They were talking about Lyra, and their words made his blood boil. Did you see that alien girl again? One of them said, she's so creepy, man. I don't know why Alex spends so much time with her. Who knows what she could be hiding? The other worker laughed, a cold, mocking sound. She's probably got some kind of mind control or something, keeping him under her spell. I wouldn't trust her. Alex's fists clenched as he listened. He wanted to shout, to tell them how wrong they were, but he didn't. Instead, he stood there for a moment, his heart racing with frustration. Before walking away, he couldn't let their words get to him. He knew Lyra was nothing like they said. She wasn't dangerous. She was kind, caring, and full of stories and wisdom from a world far beyond their own. That evening, when he met Lyra at their usual spot, he couldn't help but notice the sadness that seemed to have returned to her eyes. He knew something had changed, but he wasn't sure what. The spaceport had become more hostile lately, and he could feel the tension in the air. Are you okay? He asked, sitting beside her. His voice was gentle, but there was a hint of concern in it. Lyra didn't look at him right away. She seemed lost in thought, staring out at the ships flying overhead. Alex, I don't know if I can do this anymore, she said quietly, her voice shaking slightly. I feel like I'm making you a target too. Like I'm dragging you down with me. Alex shook his head, his expression firm. Lyra, you're not a burden. I'm here because I want to be. Don't let their words get to you. I see you for who you really are, and I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, Lyra was silent. Then, slowly she looked at him, her silver eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered Dot, and in that moment, Alex knew that no matter how hard things got, he would never leave her. He had found something in her that no one else saw, something worth fighting for, the threat. The days passed, and the spaceport remained busy, with ships arriving and departing, their engines humming like a constant backdrop to life on Earth. But the tension in the air had grown thicker, heavier. People still whispered behind Lyra's back, their glances quick and filled with fear. Though Alex had always been by her side, the whispers and stares were beginning to take their toll. Even he could feel it. He could sense the unease, the growing discomfort that surrounded Lyra wherever she went. But despite all of this, they found comfort in each other's company. Their connection had only deepened, their conversations stretching into hours. Alex would tell Lyra about his life back on Earth, the small details that made his world feel real, his childhood, his love for working with his hands, his dreams of exploring the stars. Lyra would talk about her home planet, Xandera, and the peaceful days of her youth. She shared stories of her family, how they had once lived in harmony with nature, their lives intertwined with the pulse of the world around them, and yet, despite the warmth they had found in each other, the outside world was growing colder. It wasn't just the whispers from humans. It was the constant reminder that they were different, that Earth was not fully ready to accept someone like Lyra. Then, everything changed one afternoon. The spaceport had been unusually quiet, and the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the ground. Alex was working on a ship, his hands greasy from the engines, when he heard the first screams. It wasn't a sound that he expected to hear in such a busy place. It wasn't a cry for help, it was panic. He dropped his tools and ran toward the commotion, his heart racing. As he rounded the corner, he saw the source of the chaos. A group of aliens, large, imposing figures, their bodies covered in metallic armor, had emerged from one of the ships. They weren't the usual visitors to the spaceport. These aliens were different. Their faces were obscured by dark helmets, and their armor glinted menacingly in the dim light. Their presence caused an immediate uproar. The workers scattered, taking cover, but the alien soldiers didn't seem to care. They moved quickly, their movements calculated, as if they had a purpose. Alex's eyes searched the scene, and that's when he saw her. Lyra stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes wide with fear as the soldiers moved toward her. There was a tension in the air, an energy that vibrated through the spaceport like an electric shock. Lyra looked terrified, her silver eyes darting from one soldier to the next. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she knew something was terribly wrong. "Lyra!" Alex shouted, pushing through the crowd to reach her. His heart pounded in his chest as he made his way toward her. The soldiers were closing in, their eyes scanning the area for any potential threats. They weren't here for peaceful negotiations or trade. They were here for something else. As Alex reached Lyra, he grabbed her arm and pulled her behind him, trying to shield her from the soldiers. The sound of clanging metal and shouting filled the air, and Alex felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight with fear. I don't know," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "I've never seen them before. They're not from any known faction. I don't think they're here to make peace." Before Alex could respond, one of the soldiers turned and pointed directly at them. "Target located." The soldier's voice rang out through the comm system. "Neutralize the threat." Alex's heart skipped a beat as the soldier advanced. His mind raced, but he knew they couldn't outrun them. There were too many, and they were too powerful. "Get down!" Alex shouted, pulling Lyra to the ground just as a blast of energy passed over their heads, narrowly missing them. The ground shook with the force of the blast, sending debris flying in all directions. The soldiers were coming closer now, their weapons raised. Alex's mind spun with panic, but he kept his focus. He had to protect Lyra. He had to protect the one person who had never judged him. The one person who had shown him what it meant to truly see someone, to care for them despite the odds. "Lyra, listen to me," he said, looking into her silver eyes. "I don't know what's going on, but we have to get out of here. Can you help me? Can you use your abilities to calm them down?" Lyra's face was pale, her fear visible, but there was a spark of something else in her eyes, determination. "I can try," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. She stood up slowly, her body trembling as she gathered her strength. Lyra had never been in a situation like this before. She had never faced an enemy so hostile, so determined to cause harm. But she had no choice. She had to try. She closed her eyes and focused, reaching out with her mind. The scent that surrounded her grew stronger, almost suffocating in its intensity. It wasn't just the usual calming scent of her species, it was something else. She was pushing herself to amplify it, to use it as a weapon to neutralize the soldiers. Her senses sharpened as she sent waves of the scent toward the soldiers, willing them to stop, to listen, to see that she wasn't a threat. For a moment, nothing happened. The soldiers continued to advance, their weapons raised, and Alex felt his hope begin to fade. But then something shifted. The soldiers stopped moving, their bodies stiffening. Their helmets turned toward each other, as if they were receiving new orders. Slowly, they began to lower their weapons, their once threatening posture changing. Alex's heart lifted with a breath of relief. Lyra's abilities were working. The soldiers were no longer a threat, but just as quickly as the calm had settled over the soldiers, it was shattered by a loud, screeching noise that echoed across the spaceport. A second ship, much larger than the first, appeared overhead. It was unlike anything Alex had seen before. The dark, hulking ship seemed to blot out the sky, and as it landed, a sense of dread washed over him. "That's not good," Alex muttered, his eyes widening with fear. Lyra, her face pale, looked up at the new ship. "They're not just here to cause trouble," she said quietly. "They're here to take control." The soldiers had only been a distraction. The real threat had just arrived. The sky above the spaceport darkened as the massive ship landed, its engines roaring like a beast coming to life. The new arrival was unlike any vessel Alex had seen before. It was a warship, built for power and intimidation. The dark hull of the ship shimmered under the dimming sun, casting long shadows over the ground. The soldiers who had been surrounding Alex and Lyra stood still, their bodies rigid, almost robotic as they watched the ship land. The air was thick with tension, and Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. The soldiers had backed off thanks to Lyra's calming scent, but now, with the arrival of the warship, things had shifted. Lyra stood beside him, her body tense, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. She had managed to calm the first wave of soldiers, but this new force, this larger ship, was something else entirely. "We need to move," Alex said, his voice low, but urgent. Lyra nodded, her silver eyes scanning the area. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. These soldiers weren't here for peace. and she didn't know if her abilities would be enough to stop them again. Before they could make a move, the hatch of the warship opened with a loud hiss, and figures began to emerge. These were not the same soldiers they had seen before. They were bigger, their armor heavier, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. They moved with precision, their steps in perfect unison, their presence commanding and dangerous. "We're running out of time," Alex said, grabbing Lyra's arm. "Let's get out of here." But just as they turned to leave, a loud voice echoed across the spaceport, stopping them in their tracks. "Lyra of Zandara," the voice boomed, its tone cold and unforgiving. "You are under arrest for crimes against the Intergalactic Alliance. Surrender now, or we will take you by force." Lyra froze, her body going stiff with shock. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. What crimes? I haven't done anything wrong." The soldiers didn't respond to her plea. Instead, they advanced, their weapons raised. Alex felt a surge of anger wash over him, a deep burning need to protect Lyra. He couldn't let them take her. Not after everything they had been through. "We can't fight them," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "They're too strong. Even with my abilities, I can't stop them all." Alex turned to her, his expression fierce. "You don't have to fight them alone. I'm with you, Lyra. We'll get through this." For a moment, Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. She had never felt such loyalty, such warmth from anyone, let alone a human. She had expected to be rejected, to be cast aside. But Alex had shown her nothing but kindness, even in the face of danger. She wasn't alone anymore. "I'm not going anywhere," Alex said, his voice firm. "We'll figure something out." But before they could move, the soldiers were upon them. The leader of the group, a towering figure in heavy armor, stepped forward. His voice was cold and impersonal as he addressed them. "You are coming with us, Lyra," the leader said. "You have no choice." In that moment, Alex's heart raced. He didn't know what to do. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing in on him, the realization that they were facing something far beyond their control. But then, a thought hit him. "Lyra, can you make the others listen?" Alex asked quickly. "Can you do what you did before?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. I don't know if I can. They're different. I don't think my abilities will work on them." But Alex wasn't about to give up. "We have to try." Without another word, Lyra closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. She could feel the soldiers' presence, the cold, calculated thoughts that filled their minds. She pushed her scent forward, her abilities amplifying the calming pheromones. She tried to reach them, to make them understand that she wasn't a threat, that she only wanted peace. But the soldiers remained unmoved. Their faces remained hidden, their bodies rigid, as if they had no emotions at all. "Please," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please just listen to me." But the leader of the soldiers stepped forward again, his eyes cold beneath the visor of his helmet. "You are wasting your time, Lyra. You will come with us, and you will answer for your crimes." Alex stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You don't get it, do you?" he said, his voice rising with anger. "Lyra didn't do anything wrong. She's not a criminal. She's just trying to survive, just like the rest of us." The leader didn't respond, but one of the soldiers raised his weapon, aiming it directly at Alex. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't let him get hurt. She couldn't let them take him away from her. "Stop!" Lyra shouted, her voice ringing out with a sudden intense power. She reached out with everything she had, her mind extending outward like a wave, crashing against the soldiers' thoughts. For a moment, there was silence. The soldiers froze, their bodies stiffening as they tried to resist the overwhelming force of Lyra's abilities. Alex watched in awe as Lyra's powers seemed to take control of the situation, her scent filling the air like a wave, washing over the soldiers. But just as quickly as it had started, the moment ended. The soldiers snapped back into action, their weapons raised once more. Lyra gasped, her body shaking from the effort. She couldn't hold them off forever. "Run!" she screamed at Alex. "Get out of here! Go!" Alex hesitated, his heart aching at the thought of leaving her behind. But he knew that if they didn't escape now, they wouldn't have a chance. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice firm. But before he could act, the ground beneath their feet shook, and the sound of a new voice echoed through the spaceport. This time, it was a human voice, strong, confident, and unmistakable. "Hold your fire," the voice commanded. "That alien is under my protection." Alex turned around, his heart leaping into his chest when he saw who had spoken. It was a high-ranking officer from the Earth Space Force, someone Alex had seen around the spaceport before, but never thought would show up in a situation like this. "Who are you?" the leader of the soldiers asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. The officer stepped forward, his expression hard as stone. "I'm Commander Haile, and I've been authorized to ensure the safety of Lyra of Zandara. You are not taking her anywhere." The soldiers hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. Lyra looked at Alex, her eyes wide with disbelief. Could it be true? Could she finally be free from the threat that had followed her for so long? The officer's voice rang out. "Again, stand down. These soldiers are not authorized to act without further orders from the Intergalactic Council. I suggest you leave before things get worse for you." And with that, the soldiers backed off, their weapons lowering as they retreated toward their ship. The warship's engines roared to life as it slowly lifted off the ground, disappearing into the sky. Lyra stood there, stunned, unable to process what had just happened. She looked at Alex, who was just as shocked as she was. I don't know. What just happened?" she whispered. "Are we safe now?" Alex smiled, pulling her close. "For now, yeah, we're safe." And in that moment, Lyra knew that she wasn't alone anymore. She had a future here on Earth, and with Alex by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next.